You got the 5, you've got the 10, north and south, the 101 and the 5 north and south, the 10 heading east, the 60, which then loops around and runs into the 10 just past the fault. So yeah, it's wow. I just thought about that. If the fault lets go, holy shit, the Cajon Pass is where the 5 and the that's where the 5 goes. So you'd have the 101 north. That's it. That would be that's going to be ugly, because you cannot airlift enough supplies into Los Angeles to feed 10 million people. And that's what the metropolitan Los Angeles, well, I can find out. The last time I checked, it was 8. I'm assuming it's quite a bit bigger now, but let's ask the Goog. How many people in the metropolitan Los Angeles area? Okay. How many people are in the metropolitan Los Angeles area? 12 million. Oh, 18 million. Oh, 18.6. Okay, so 18.6 million people. You can't feed or give them water once you've gotten a good solid 8-point earthquake. Now, you don't have to worry so much about brick buildings collapsing. Most of them have been reinforced. You don't have to worry about gas pipelines. Most of those have automatic shutoff valves on them. You would have to worry about electricity, and you would have to worry about water. Now, I'm not saying there's not a lot of water just laying around in the Southern California desert area, which is where Los Angeles is. But it used to be tumbleweeds, pretty much exclusively. All that vegetation, yeah, that's from water brought in. That's how we managed to drain a couple of major lakes in Northern California. And I believe one in Nevada, right? Lake Mono. That's a big city. And when that goes, it's going to go bad. So if you're in LA or the LA metropolitan area, Riverside, San Bernardino, Orange County, etc., you better get my book now. Because if you don't, you're going to regret it. And it's really easy. And by the way, instead of $50 or $60 and then trying to sign you up for a monthly subscription for some bullshit, I don't do any of that. And it's only $19. $19, and I will share with you basically everything you need to survive. Whether it's a localized event that's going to knock out water and power, etc., for a couple of weeks, or something bigger. Now, something like New Orleans, that was actually a cakewalk. I was there. I went there after Katrina. So that was really not a big deal compared to LA. I know for the, 2,000 people or so that lost their lives, it was a big deal. And for the people that I talked to when I was in New Orleans, right after the levees broke, I got there 2 days after the levees broke. And a lot of people had no idea. They had absolutely no idea what was going on because they didn't have power. And so they didn't realize, and batteries, they didn't think to run down and get batteries because they knew that, all of these warnings about hurricanes, they're always the same. They always overwarn you and then underperform as far as the hurricanes go. Let me do this. Boom. There we go. Now you can see it. And by the way, that is if you want to buy some silver, right there. Boom. That is my number for buying silver. And up there is where you go to my channel if you want to buy my book. Now, if you don't live in Southern California, buy the book anyway. And the reason I say that is because the more I study our power grid, the more I realize that it's not going to take much. Really, it's not going to take much. It's something like an X30 or an X40 flare, which is not the biggest flare we've ever seen. There are X100 flares that have happened, X500 flares that have happened, and that's what we can see. Going back thousands of years, and how often do they happen? We have no idea. When I say we, the European Space Agency and NASA, just in the last, I want to say 6 months, have decided that it's very possible that our star is capable of an X1000 solar flare. We had no idea. I mean, we didn't know that. We thought that if a star went nova, it was gone. We thought that if a star had an X1000 flare, it exploded. Turns out that's not true at all. Turns out that a star has an enormous amount of gravitational pull. So all of the cosmic dust and crap that's floating around in space gets sucked into it. At some point, it builds up enough that it starts to apparently, whether it's overheat or over energize inside. And then the best way I can describe it is that star, including our sun, sneezes and blows off that shell. And when it sneezes and blows off that shell of crap that it's accumulated over thousands and thousands of years of sun diving comets and asteroids, etc., it appears that what happens is when it does that sneeze, it blows off hundreds of trillions of tons of superheated plasma. Well, if that's facing Earth, we are in big trouble. Well, stars that are giants, there's a couple different reasons. Number one, if they're at the end of their life cycle, they tend to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then they collapse. Now, here's something that probably none of you know. I just found out, and I thought it was absolutely crazy. They have found brown dwarf stars, and not a white dwarf. A white dwarf is extremely dense and extremely hot. A brown dwarf, which is extremely dense, they estimate that a teaspoon of that material would weigh as much as Earth. That's how dense the material is. And it's about the same temperature as a cup of coffee. There are stars in our galaxy and in the universe that are literally as hot as a cup of coffee. You could touch one. Of course, if you got within a light year of it, it would suck you in and squish you like a bug because it is so dense and the gravity is so incredibly strong. Now, what's really interesting is that the Dogon tribe in Central Africa, well, Northern Africa, they talked about the people from the planet that is circling Sirius A and B, both stars. They knew of both of them before anybody else did, and they talked about them. They said that there was another star that circled Sirius A and Sirius B that was a dark star, and that it was so dense that you couldn't hold a handful of it because a handful of it would be as heavy as the Earth. I don't know how the fuck the Dogon tribe could possibly know that, but they did 100 years ago. Very interesting. So there's Sirius A, B, and C. And Sirius A was always known about because Sirius is a very big star. It's if you go directly off the end of Orion's belt, it's just off to the side of that, maybe a few inches away. And Sirius is a very large star. What's interesting is not only is it a very large star, but it's circled in a semi-helical orbit by a smaller star. Now, This is where it's going to get weird. Are you guys sitting down? Are you drinking? Please be drinking, okay? It's Friday night, and I don't give a fuck about talking about the economy or silver because nobody knows what's going to happen over the weekend. Israel wants World War III so bad they're actually peeing a little bit. They're jumping up and down, and they're squeezing so hard that they're actually peeing their panties a little bit right now in Israel. They want a war with these fucking Muslims so bad. But apparently, Trump flipped the script and said, you know what? It doesn't matter if we get what we want. It doesn't matter if we actually look like we lost a little bit. Let's not let the world's economy collapse. And that's what is going to happen in the next couple of weeks if we don't stop this nonsense. And Israel's like, nah, no. Did that sound like a baby? Because that's exactly how they're acting. They're pulling their thumb out of their mouth just long enough to go, yeah, Holocaust, bad, yeah. And that's it. That's all they can do. And of course, every politician, whether they're Democrat or Republican, now hates Trump. But the only thing they have in common is all of the people who hate Trump are all taking money from AIPAC. What? The American Israeli Political Action Committee? Well, why would AIPAC? Oh, that's right. So all of the members of Congress and Senate who are screaming right now about the end of the war, even though they wanted the war to end, now they don't want the war to end. Those people are what we call good politicians, because the billionaire who was my mentor in Beverly Hills, Dan Gottlieb, you can look him up. He's a real person. Dan Gottlieb taught me that a good politician is one who stays bought. And I said, Dan, that's so cynical, bro. You know, I mean, he's so much older than me. I was kind of doing his daughter at the time for many years. So he decided if he was stuck with me, and he actually liked me, he was like, look, I'm going to show you how to be rich. And he was always disappointed that I didn't want to be a billionaire, but he was happy that I was happy, because nobody in his family was happy. They were all miserable people. So he said, look, I know it sounds cynical, but the reality is that is the definition of a good politician. They're all crooked. They're all liars. They're all cheats. They're all thieves. They're all idiots. If they were smart, they'd just get into business and become rich, and they wouldn't care what people thought about them. But their egos are such that they need power. They need people to worship them, which is their biggest downfall, because you can scare the shit out of them and get them to do anything you want. So you bribe them and scare them, and bribe them and scare them. That's exactly what AIPAC does to everybody. Look, we'll give you all the money in the world. We'll make you so rich you don't know what to do. Or we can primary you and you can end up like Thomas Massie for telling the truth. What do you want to do? It's like Thomas Massie wanted to tell the truth. And look how many other people in Congress are like him. 15 or 20. Democrats and Republicans combined. 15 or 20. So we don't know what's going to happen over the weekend. It's going to be mayhem. I'm assuming that the markets are just going to absolutely collapse. I don't see silver going much farther down, simply because it's got this absolute floor of about 60, and it's at 64 now, which is extremely depressed, which is awesome if you want to buy some. But other than that, it is what it is. None of this makes any sense. There's no rhyme or reason to what's going on. It's Israel either gets what they want and we go back to war and we lose thousands and thousands of Americans for them, or we don't. That's it. We're done. So in the meantime, let's talk about something fun. The Dogon in, is it Chad? The Dogon live, I believe it's Chad. Where's the Dogon tribe located? Mali. Shit. No, next country over. And extending into Burkina Faso. Okay. And they live along what river? Come on. Give me the information. Huh. So it doesn't say, but there's a river that runs through this valley that they live in. They're amazing. It's a needed item, no silver, no solar. Yeah, well, that's the thing, Moon Monster. No economy, no solar. See what I'm saying? No energy, no solar. No gasoline, no diesel, no LPG, no solar, no economy. So at that point, you better know how to hunt. Seriously, that's not a joke. Um, so the Dogon people knew about this dark star. They knew that there was more than one star when you look at Sirius. They knew that there was another star, much smaller, that nobody had ever identified. And they had drawings of it in their caves, etc. And interestingly enough, when the guys that found out about this other star they talked about, they came back from their time living with the Dogon and they told people, and it was very interesting because at that point we had just in the last few months before that discovered that using the Palomar Observatory, a 200-inch refracting telescope, the largest telescope in the world, the largest polished mirror in the world, 200 inches across. We had just discovered that Sirius A had an invisible twin, much smaller, Sirius B. Well, the Dogon had been talking about Sirius B for thousands of years, but you can't possibly see it with the naked eye, and you can't possibly see it with anything less than a 200-inch across, very, very finely polished mirror. No, I don't think so. Luckily, Michael, the biggest problem that we have right now is that there are way, 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 way too many deer in the United States and Canada. And because of their close proximity to each other, the overcrowding, there is a huge amount of wasting disease going around. And it's a neurological disease that they can transmit to each other. And by the way, they can transmit it to you if you decide to eat a deer that you just find laying around. Not a good idea. And if you see a deer that's foaming at the mouth and stumbling, and you decide, hey, that's an easy one to take down, good night, because you can get this disease. Now, it's hard for humans to get it. You've got to eat the meat. But again, because of the proximity to each other, it's spreading like wildfire when it normally wouldn't. So that's exactly right. It's not always safe. So you gotta be careful. But again, if it's a perfectly healthy deer, I believe that it's pretty safe. So, but again, it's caused because there are too many deer. We didn't have any wolves. We didn't have any wolves in places like Yellowstone for a long time. And so now we've gone exactly the opposite direction. Because we took them out, the deer and elk population exploded. We waited 40 years or 50 years and put them back. There were so many elk and deer that the wolf population exploded. And now they have super groups of wolves, where a pack would normally be 10 or 12 wolves. Now they're up to 100 wolves in a super pack. What the hell do you do? So, back to the Dogon. They knew about Sirius B before we did. And they also knew about Sirius C, and that was discovered in about 1978. So the question, of course, is how did they know all of these things that Europeans didn't know with all of their advanced telescopes and whatnot? And how did they know? This is the best one. They were English. The first guys that came were English, and they wanted to study the Dogon. And the Dogon said, "Okay, no problem. You can stay with us." And the Englishmen, of course, were, as Englishmen tend to be, incredibly arrogant about their civilization versus the savage Dogon. So the Dogon let them live there for quite a while. And they went back to England and talked about this savage tribe that had these goofy, weird rituals that didn't make any sense. And how they had this one thing that they did every 51 years. They'd have this big ritual where they'd have a rain dance. They wanted to make it rain. These savages, these stupid Africans. Well, as it turns out, many decades later, 4 or 5 decades later, I believe, to be exact, some Belgians went there to live with the Dogon. And of course, there were Dogon elders that were still alive from the first time the English had been there. And they noticed something. They noticed that the Belgians didn't really want to sit up on the sides of the canyon and just watch them. They wanted to interact with them. And they did. And at one point, after 5 years, the Dogon elders came to them and said, "Hey, you guys are part of our tribe now. I mean, you've been with us for years, and you're not just watching us, you're interacting, and you've become sort of a part of our family. Would you be interested in becoming Dogon elders?" And the Belgians said, "Well, yeah, absolutely." These anthropologists were thrilled. They were like, "What do we have to do? I mean, if we want to become elders?" And they said, "Well, we just have to teach you our, sort of our secrets, the stuff that we don't tell everybody." And the anthropologists were absolutely thrilled by this. And they said, "Absolutely. All whites are immigrants." God. Yeah, because Kunta Kinte actually came from Norway. Anyway, go back in the peanut gallery. So they taught these guys, they taught these Belgians the truth about their rain dance. It wasn't a rain dance. They said, "We're not doing a rain dance. We're actually celebrating the journey of Sirius B around Sirius A." Now, they didn't call it Sirius A and B, but they had their name for the star, and then they had the smaller star that went around it. And they said, it takes 51 years for the small star to go all the way around the big star. Keep in mind, now, this is still many, many years ago, way before we actually knew how long one orbit of Sirius B took to get around Sirius A. And the Belgians said, "How would you know that? How would you know how long it takes for a star that we can't even see to go around one of the largest stars in the entire galaxy, Sirius?" And they said, "Well, glad you asked. The people from the planet that's in that star system, they told us." Okay, that sounds completely batshit crazy, but